All right. Well, this is the second episode of the Spin Rate Cast Pod. This is JML. Frank joining me once again. We'd like to thank everyone for watching our first episode last week, whether it was the entire episode or just clips on social media about me and us talking about Judge for 15 seconds. That's awesome. The YouTube channel as a whole has grown from, I don't know, when we recorded last week, we were at 70 subscribers. You know what we're at now? We're at 300 subscribers. That is pretty awesome. And I'd like to thank everyone that has supported the channel. My fellow YouTubers, Run Good Life, Pack Attack Jackpot, Hitman Rips, Chai City Pulls. The list can go on and on and on. But, man, it's just remarkable, the community that's being built on YouTube and the collaboration and the ability to create content is just, it's getting easier and easier to do. And by no means am I a professional, but, we want to have a good time and we want to get out accurate information from a different perspective than you normally get. And this is what this show promises to deliver to you. This week, our show is going to feature our top 20 players in MLB. You may agree or disagree with some of the people on the list. That's why there's a comment box down below. You can comment. You can write your list. We just have a bunch of fun with it. We do have our Patreon set up as well, which is in our description box and on our YouTube channel. The link tree that's attached to our YouTube channel. We would appreciate anyone that could join. And there's some benefits to joining. Frank, how are you doing this evening?
Doing pretty good. We're having a bit of a warm day here in New York, but it's 1st of July, so of course that's nothing unusual. Feeling pretty good. We've had some fun baseball so far, coming into another month now, so a couple weeks before the All-Star break. So I'm really looking forward to all the craziness about to unfold around the trade market, everything else about that, of course.
Yeah, man. 56-21, right? New York Yankees.
Yeah, man. It's they just had a 22-6 June, which is apparently their best month since July 1956, which is nuts.
Yeah.
They're wow.
They're on they're quite on quite a roll. The only thing that I am concerned about at this time is they need to rest some of the pitchers. They need to skip some starts. I think Sevi is wearing down a little bit. He hasn't thrown this much in a while. So he's definitely should see a start or two missed. I don't know. Is Herman ready to come back yet? Or how close is he?
Yeah, I think he's pretty close. I've heard he's been doing a lot of rehab starts lately, and apparently he's very close. So, yeah, we could see more spot starts. We saw Sears the other night coming in another spot, do well. Herman's another option, either as a starter, spot starter, middle relief, whatever you want to use him as. Chapman's been activated today, so obviously the bullpen's being a little more fortified. I'm interested to see what the trade market is looking like around starting pitching. There's not
there's the two big names out there.
Yeah, there's two big names out there. I think we discussed a little bit last week, maybe, or we mentioned it.
Yeah, Castillo and Monte.
Castillo, obviously. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it would probably. They're obviously going to be in the market for these guys. Not saying they're it's something they have to do, but as you said, these guys are going to start wearing down. Sevi hasn't pitched this much in 4 years. Nestor's never pitched this much. Tyone also came. This is a second year back off after missing almost 3 years. So, yeah, it's definitely a good idea to fortify that. You can never have enough pitching, as we always say. I don't see them going for reliever, but starter, yeah, possible. Maybe, of course, we talked about maybe some lefty bats in the outfield.
Yeah,
definitely on the market. Definitely in the market for that. after. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, I saw an interesting tweet today. Someone with the blue check, I forget, but apparently, like there was like fantasy booking the Yankees post trade deadline. The interesting name was Ian Happ from the Cubs. I just don't know how much the Cubs want for him because he's under contract, like he's arbitration eligible for like next couple years. So, what would we have to give up to get someone like him compared to like a Benintendi? Like, to me, I don't want to give up that many pieces for Ian Happ. Like, he's just he's not like he's a good player, but he's not a great player. And speaking of great players, Juan Soto turned down, I think this is like the second or third contract extension from the Nationals, and each one, the money is life-changing money. I think the first one was around 280, 300 million. Then there was like one for 350. And then the latest was reported like $420 million. Juan Soto, 23 years old, won a batting title, won a World Series. One of the faces of baseball. Unfortunately, he does play in Washington, so that market isn't the greatest. So some people they don't know Juan Soto, which speaks a lot about the game and their marketing, which we will have an episode eventually about that. But at this point, he's turned down the money. So I don't think it's necessarily the money. Like, I don't think he's going to get anything more than $450 million from, the Dodgers, the Yankees, when he becomes a free agent 2 or 3 years from now. He just doesn't want to play in Washington. Like, that's the signal to me. He does not want to play in Washington. And if he doesn't want to play in Washington and he's under contract for the next 2 or 3 years under arbitration, while his value is at an all-time high because he's 23 years old, you should look to move him now. They're not going to win with Juan Soto this year or even next year. Maybe not even 2 years from now. They are on a full rebuild mode. He wants to win. They can get a king's ransom for him. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah. So I mean, the fact that he turned this down again, I am 100% in agreement with you. He definitely does not want to play in Washington. That's the only thing I can get out of this. He's already won there. Like, he's got everything he wanted out of there. So he really just wants to move on. And he figures by doing this, maybe they will move him, and they absolutely should. And no better time than now. There's a lot of teams doing it. We have expanded playoffs this year. There's going to be a lot of teams looking for upgrades. They could really cash in and get a huge package to like really kick this rebuild into another gear. Like you said, I don't think he's going to get any more money than that. I'm sure it's going to be a big number, but I mean, 400 million. I mean, it's not about the money with him. It's definitely not about the money.
Every team that's in contention will try to trade for Juan Soto. They will throw whatever prospects it takes to get him if they make him available. And Washington should do it now. They lost Bryce Harper and got nothing back for him because they thought they were going to re-sign him. But they should know Harper was a Boris client. I'm not sure who Soto's represented by, but usually with the Boris guys, the highest bidder takes the player. I don't think this is necessarily going to be the case with Soto because $420 million is a lot of money. I don't even think the Yankees would pay $420 million for Soto. It's being realistic when you have Judge and whatever. It sets a bad precedent for when you have your other players on a team that are up for contract. You're like, well, you paid this guy $420 million. What are you going to pay me? But I could see, because he's under arbitration control, a team like the Rays can go for him. Toronto can go for him. Boston can go for him. Like, the list goes on and on. It's similar to the list that we had with Judge, but I would double it. There's probably about 16 to 20 teams that would line up for Soto right now.
Oh, definitely. Like you said, what does he got? How many years does he have left? 3 years, you said?
I think he's got 3 years of control.
And even trying to figure out how much you would make in arbitration, I mean, 3 years of Juan Soto.
Well, 2.5. So this half of year, and then
even so, two more years. Even the 2 more years. What is he going to make in arbitration? Even if he made $25 million, even if he made $30 million, you're getting prime Juan Soto, 23 years old, for 2.5 years for like list over $60 million or something like that, without even talking about an extension. I mean, everybody has to be checking on him. I mean, everybody. I don't care if they have an entire team full of great players. There's no holes. You're going to talk to Washington.
Even if you're small market like Tampa Bay, right?
Oh, Tampa, yeah.
They would figure out how to fit him within their budget. And even if they know they're not going to re-sign him, they will flip him and get stuff back for him in due time. So that's what I'm saying. Every team that's in contention should just go, all right, Washington, what do you want? Have your pick. Even the Yankees should do it. Because if you were to go out and get Juan Soto and just have him in the outfield, he makes the outfield better because he's one of the best defensive outfielders in the game. He's got one of the best arms, if not the best arm in the game. He covers ground like a center fielder in right field. In right field in Yankee Stadium, it's not easy to play right field. It's not easy to play the outfield at all in Yankee Stadium, matter of fact. That guy, like I said, he'd just be a great addition to any contending team. Whatever it takes to get him, go get him.
Yeah, I mean, he could be the piece to put anybody over the top. I don't care how good your lineup is or how good your defense is.
Could you imagine Atlanta getting him and having Acuna and Soto in the outfield?
I could see him going for it too. I'm not sure about their how high rated their prospects are right now, but yeah, they could absolutely do that tomorrow, and I would be 100% on board with them. That would make them the favorites in the NL East immediately.
And Washington's dumb enough to trade within their own division, so
yeah, absolutely.
You had mentioned before we were recording something about the strike zone that they wanted to change. You want to get into that briefly?
Yeah. I was thinking about it because I know Manfred I don't know, but he was talking, but he said, he intends to have the automated strike zone, aka robot umpires, ready for 2024. Like he said it like with conviction, like, no, this is going to happen. We're going to get it done. And it's interesting because after watching a lot of baseball every night, watching umpiring, I went to Yankee Stadium last Saturday. Unfortunately, I was there for the no-hitter, but even watching that live, which is not always the easiest to judge the strike zone when you're in the stands, but we were underneath because I made sure we were all the way up underneath out of the sun, so we had little monitors there.
Yeah,
and even then, I mean, I don't know if it's this year. It's something about this year. I don't know if it's because all the talk about the strike zone, umpires are on edge, but I mean, there's some really awful calls this year.
Yeah.
I mean, the other night, Boone he eventually got tossed out. Judge, obviously, we know, has always gotten ridiculously low called strikes.
Yep.
But I mean, I've seen, and not just from Judge, I've seen some really, I understand watching it. Like, if you're behind the plate, you're trying to watch the plate, you're trying to watch the batter. I don't know how you could be that bad. just like some of these calls, even at the plate or at first base or whatever, and then even some of these replay challenges I've noticed lately, like they're not like finding enough evidence on overturning. Like there's some like really, I don't know, something's going on. I don't know if it's because he's been talking about this, but maybe that's why he's bringing this up. Obviously, we don't know how it will work. He did mention like he hopes to have like maybe a system where the umpires would have an earpiece and they let them know what the K zone or whatever you would call it would say, or maybe he would like to expand replays for strikes and balls, which I could see happening too, even if they don't go full on. I mean, you can challenge pretty much anything, but why do we have certain little few things that you can't challenge? You know, I mean, I saw them challenge a catcher's interference the other night and get it overturned. So I mean, I don't know why balls and strikes are so far off. But yeah, I don't know what you think about that. But I've been watching it. Yeah, everybody's gonna say you're blatant, but I'm seeing some calls on both sides of the plate here. I'm not talking just about against the Yankees. I'm just seeing it in general. I don't know. It's head scratching to say the least.
My take is I'm all for getting the human element out of the game because the human element has now run its course with the called balls and strikes. I was not a fan of doing this about 5 or 10 years ago, but the technology has grown, and it seems like it would work out now better than it would in the past. My one fear is that they don't test this well enough and they rush it, and it makes it even worse. So this is why we have the minor leagues to test it, and they should rigorously test this before rolling this out into the majors and make sure that a guy like Aaron Judge, his strike zone is adjusted for his height, and for that matter, a Jose Altuve, right?
Sure.
Both ends of the spectrum. You have someone that's shorter than the average batter. Then you have Stanton and O'Neal Cruz, who are 6'7" and 6'8". Their strike zone is going to be completely different.
Right. And I mean, yeah, but we're talking about like if you can get it right, then you're going to be 100% fair. Sure, some people might not get the calls they used to, but like if it's working well and the fans are like feeling confident about it, I think it won't be a problem because at least we can say it's a little fair. Especially now, like you said, just the pitch com this year. I mean, look at the difference that's made.
Yep.
I know there's been some issues with it at a time, but it's worked a lot better than I thought it would. I know they did test that down in the minors, but it's worked very well. I know they did testing.
Has worked tremendously because you have a lot of international players.
Sure.
So that they don't speak fluent English. So when you have communication issues, English and you have the interpreter, stuff does get lost in translation. With the pitch com, it basically erases the language barrier that you have. And what I've seen this year with, you can have a catcher step in who hasn't worked with these pitchers before, and there's not as much of a learning curve as there used to be. Yeah. Like, oh, okay, what do you like to throw? Cool. Boom. Boom. It's been fluid, and teams like the Yankees have obviously executed it really well. I mean, look at their staff ERA for their starters. And they have a whole new catching crew. Higashioka was there, but he never caught all these guys. Trevino wasn't here until like a week before the season.
You're right. But definitely eliminated that learning curve, and it's made a lot. It's one less thing to worry about. I think the pitchers are a little more confident, and obviously they're not worried about people stealing signs. They're not worried about
language barrier.
Focus on throwing the ball. Language barrier is 100% a huge thing, and I don't think it's talked about enough. But
look at Ohtani, right?
Yeah,
Ohtani. They don't need the interpreter to come out there. The dude can just go out there and throw pitches, and he knows what pitches to throw. And look at his strikeout numbers this year. I mean, they were already good, but now they're even better. His Ks per 9, his just everything. PitchCom has worked. So again, if they test the automated balls and strikes, and it's as good as PitchCom, then it's another thing that's going to help grow the game, along with next year, getting rid of the shift. You have batters who are still struggling with the shift, and when that's gone, it's going to be beautiful for the game. It was basically a cheap way of getting outs.
Yeah.
Now they can't do that.
They can't do that, and it simplifies strategy. I'm seeing people shifting when it's a double play situation. I'm like, what is going on here? What if he hits it right through that hole there? And of course, we talk about like it's just tough for these batters to learn to hit the other way.
Yeah.
So what is the point of this? We're just like, it's gotten too far. Like they're shifting on everybody now. Like I used to be a few players they shift on. It's pretty much everybody's got like a tailored like shift of sorts against them.
So when the shift became really popular around 2010, 2011, Mark Tashara was a over 300 hitter. Let me pull up Baseball Reference. Hold on. This is the beauty of recording and thinking stuff on the fly. Mark Tashara, guy who probably a Hall of Famer before the shift was implemented. And this is why I saved this. Mark Tashara, through 2009, his career batting average was like 315. He finished his career with a 268 batting average. So when the shift started coming in 2010, one of the batters that got shifted on the most was Mark Tashara. Now, his power numbers didn't suffer that much. Like he's, 30 and 100. The 2010, 2011 season, 24 and 84. Then he got hurt, and then he started breaking down a bit. I mean, 2015 he had a good year in the first half of the year when he had 31 homers, 79 ribbies. But the shift kind of took this guy out of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I think he's actually been very candid about that. He's spoken about that before in the past, and I agree. I mean, this guy was not just a power hitter. This guy was a 300 hitter.
Yeah.
He said if he had 5 or 6 more years of hitting over 300 with those 30 home runs, close to 100 RBIs, whatever it was, we're talking borderline Hall of Famer right now. I'm sure there was people that would vote for him if those numbers had continued. It definitely was the first player to have a real impact. Was Big Mark.
And the other guy that got shifted on a lot, who the Yankees ended up signing, Brian Mccann.
Yeah.
Brian Mccann was a borderline Hall of Fame catcher, right? Because you got to put catchers in a different category.
Sure.
He was batting around 290, 295 as a catcher prior to 2010, 2011. He finished his career with a 262 batting average with his 282 home runs and over 1,000 RBIs, which is great for the catcher position. But if he would have had like the 290 batting average, 285, his stats would look better in the eyes of the committee. So getting rid of the shift is good for the game. It sucks when you have Hall of Fame classes that have no Hall of Famers. Like literally they can't vote someone in because they go, well, he didn't have the numbers. This person didn't have the numbers, or they took steroids, so we can't vote them in.
Yeah, we're going to have to start looking at this shift era in a different way. Like they eventually may look at the steroid era in a different way.
Yep.
How do you quantify
that? It's crazy to think about how a shift altered careers, and that's just two that come to the top of my head.
Think about how many more RBIs Tashara would have had in his career, but not just average. I mean, just base hits alone. Like how many base hits with runners on did that take away, even with nobody on? It's crazy to think about. I'm definitely on board with them getting rid of that, because to me it's not worth the impact on the game. yeah,
No.
it's good if you could stop. It's good. It's good strategy for your team, but I don't think it works as well at times anyway. It just confuses a lot of the players. Takes them out of sorts. It's not natural. I'm not. It got out of hand. I mean, I know Tampa was really good in that early on when Madden was with them. He was into shifting. He was into like using a lot of relief pitchers, which they've obviously changed the rules on that now too. But yeah, I always think of the Rays of that era when I think of the shift
And then it carried over to its Cubs teams and
yeah,
so on and so forth. And
it's
Tampa continued using the shift, and these small market clubs using the shift. Mark Tashara, all right, finished his career, 14-year Major League Baseball career, 409 homers. I'm going to give him 1,300 RBIs because he had 1,298, net 268 batting average. Now, if he didn't get shifted on, and the shift wasn't a thing, he probably could have had, let's tack on probably 100 more RBIs to that total. And who knows, maybe his confidence is different and he hits about 20 to 30 more homers. He's probably in the Hall of Fame because those numbers are probably similar to Vladimir Guerrero Sr., obviously not Junior. Vladimir Guerrero, 449 career homers, 1,500 RBIs. This is where he has Tashara is on the batting average, 318. But if Tashara is at 295, 300, Tashara is also in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Maybe he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, of course, but he's getting in there at some point because they're going to have to start putting guys in there. And if you look at if he had those numbers, I mean, because his position at first base,
one thing that Tashara has over Vlad is a World Series ring.
Yeah.
Vlad doesn't have one. Vlad, to me, is a better player all time.
Sure.
But when you're looking at numbers, I mean, Vlad didn't have to deal with the shift. He retired in 2010. The shift was just being implemented. And that's when he got out of the game. Coincidentally enough, that's when he got out of the game. But
I'm just thinking about it. How many players, when we talk about hits being taken away, how many guys that could have gotten on the border or the cusp of 3,000 hits? And maybe that's why we're not going to see a lot of that from this era because of the shift has taken away so many even base hits.
Yeah,
I don't know if you think about that, but it just came to my head right now when you were talking.
Yeah. I think Altuve will be the last guy for a while that will end up with 3,000 hits from like this generation. If he continues on this pace and he doesn't break down. But if you look at his numbers, I think he's close to like 2,000 and he's around 30. So you figure if he hangs around for like 7 more years, he'll get there.
Yeah, I'll say something.
So the moment we've all been waiting for, our top 20 MLB position players. No pitchers on this list. Maybe we'll do a list for pitchers at a different time.
That can be a different conversation.
So we both did separate lists. I'll start with my number 20. Alejandro Kirk, catcher, Toronto Blue Jays. This guy is having a great year. He's actually been the most consistent batter on the Blue Jays. And I remember looking at the All-Star voting, and I'm like, Alejandro Kirk's leading the catchers in the vote. I'm like, well, I looked at his numbers and I watching him, watching some Blue Jay games because I have the MLB package. I'm like, you know what? This guy he's pretty decent. And so far this year, he's delivering. I think he's the highest rated catcher when it comes to wins above replacement. So analytics wise, he's like the number 1 catcher in baseball. He's handled the pitching staff really well, and he's a younger guy. He was originally on the Dodgers organization, but the Dodgers they had so many good catchers in their minor leagues that they've been able to like flip these guys to get the pieces that they need. They traded when they got Scherzer last year, Ruiz, who's now the catcher of the Nationals, and that kid's also really good. The Dodgers have Will Smith, who's one of the best catchers in baseball as well. They're just like a catcher factory. So Kirk is one of those guys. So he's my number 20. Who did you have on your list?
Yeah, that's a definitely good call. I don't know if he made my list, but yeah, I'm gonna stick with catcher, believe it or not, and I'm gonna
Okay.
go. It might be a controversial pick. Um, I still like Salvi Perez.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was looking at his numbers today. I mean, the guy, and he's been catching like I forget how many years he's been around, but we're talking about a guy that's been around around a decade or so.
Yeah.
And he's still up there offensive wise. He's still pretty strong catching wise. There's something about him. I always liked him. I just think he's a winning player.
I mean, last year
players,
he had arguably the greatest offensive season that any catcher's ever had.
Yeah.
He had 48 homers and 121 RBIs that led the American League. So,
yeah, I mean I think that says it all. Yeah, that's why I'm definitely putting him on my list. Still think he's one of the better players in the game.
Yeah, I can't argue with you on that. I just didn't have him my top 20.
Yeah, I would just
I wanted a catcher on my list to support catchers, and I think Sal Perez gets enough love, and wanted to give someone else some love. My number 19, Nolan Arenado of the Cardinals, arguably the best defensive third baseman of this generation, and maybe of all time when it's all said and done. And that's a very lofty thing to say when Brooks Robinson played third base, and I think Brooks Robinson had like 18 Gold Gloves at third base, some ridiculous number. Arenado moved from Colorado to St. Louis last year, and he hasn't really missed a beat, in my opinion. He's still, high batting average, still has pop in the bat. He was an all-star last year, his first year with the Cardinals, 34 homers, 104 RBIs, Gold Glove again. This year, pretty much midway point, 14 and 49. So he's on pace for another 30 and 100 season, playing his, great defense. This guy, if he continues on this pace at his position and he's 31, turns 32 next year, if he continues this pace till he's like 36, 37, we're looking at probably a first ballot Hall of Famer that not a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, man, I agree on that for sure. I'm going to go a little different. I've looked up some consensus people's picks on like what they think the top 20 players in baseball are,
Sure.
and I've kind of based it around that, but also like what I think. Obviously, I don't get to see a lot of these players all the time. I don't watch every game. I try to pay attention to play fantasy baseball and all that.
Yeah.
But all right, so with my number 19, I think I'm going to go somebody we talked about before we came on the air today. When I saw in person last week. That's going to be Kyle Tucker, who's been on I believe it or not, I've seen him on a lot of people's list. And just watching him, he's like pretty much impossible to get out. At least the Yankees have a hard time getting him out. But he's not somebody a lot of people are talking about. But
and this speaks to Houston. They just develop these guys,
great players, like a factory. Like you said, like catching factory. They just have like a knack at just getting these great position players. And he's like, and to me, he's one of the most important parts of their offense. In that series last week, he showed it. So That's why I'm putting him on my list.
Cool. What I like and appreciate is that we have different lists. It just speaks to the amount of really good baseball players that we have in the league. And when we do an episode about the marketing of the game, we'll explore like why is it that there's so many good players, but it seems like baseball doesn't get as much love as the other sports, even though their talent right now is probably the deepest amount of talent that's been in the game in a long time. My number 18, coming off a World Series win for him. Former first baseman for the Atlanta Braves, and he still wishes he was on the Atlanta Braves. Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman, they'll say he's off to a slow start, but his slow start is 9 homers, 47 ribbies, batting .304, and playing really Gold Glove caliber first base for the Dodgers. Former MVP, former world, he wasn't World Series, Jorge Solaire was, but he's just a leader.
In October for sure too.
Yeah, he's a performer. He'll be 33 next year. He's another guy that if his career was to end in about 4 years at this pace in his average season, he's another Hall of Fame player in my book. So number 18, Freddie Freeman.
Nice. Great pick there. 18, I'm gonna put Arenado here, honestly. I know you talked about it already. There's not much more we need to say about him, but definitely agree with everything you said about Arenado. Probably one of the best third basemen I've seen, like, in my lifetime, even.
Yeah, so third baseman that I remember seeing, so I'm 36. Robin Ventura was a really good third baseman. Eric Chavez was a really good third baseman. Scott Rowland was a really good third baseman. But then Nolan Arenado comes along, and I'm like, man, he makes me forget how good these other guys were. So that's a testament to him. So my number 17, I hate to say this, comes from our rival, the Boston Red Sox, Xander Bogaerts. He's a guy that he is very much like their Jeter, right? He is very clutch. He plays a really good shortstop. And when, like I said, when you need a hit, he gets the hit. He's got that clutch gene. He's developed into, he's not a power hitter, but he's like a 25. Power. He's like a 25 homer, 85 RBI guy. He's won the Silver Slugger 4 times at shortstop. I don't know. I just love the way he plays, and I think he's a leader for that team. And they'll be fools if they let that guy walk. So sure. Xander at 17 for me. Your pick.
Sure. Great pick. All right, so I'm gonna go. Let's see, we're at 17 now? 16.
17.
Okay, 17. All right. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put. I'm also gonna go to Red Sox. I'm also gonna go to Red Sox right here. And that's just where I'm gonna put Devers.
Okay.
I know I like Arenado. I think obviously Arenado, I believe, is probably a better defensive third baseman, and he's pretty comparable offensively. But Devers is like a one-man wrecking crew, especially against the Yankees. These are guys that you build your team around, and obviously the Red Sox have. He's another one of the knack they have for finding these players and just turning them into it. He's like a nightmare at bat, like, to get this guy out. Obviously, Chapman's had his issues with him. A lot of people had issues with him. Yeah, I mean that guy is a hitter. He's a major league hitter. That's all you need to say. Stud
Yeah.
player.
Yeah, Devers will also be on my list at some point.
Yeah, I feel comfortable putting him around here. Although I could hear arguments about putting him a lot higher. So we'll
yeah,
see
I
what
can too.
people think.
I just think from a defensive perspective,
Yeah,
he's not great. And that's why like another person on the list I have, people can argue that he might be in a top 5 right now, but I just couldn't put him in my top 5.
yeah.
But at my number 16, I have New York Met Pete Alonso. Say what you will. I mean, he had the best rookie season, slugging wise, in the history of baseball his rookie year. I mean, he beat the Judge home run record. So he had 53 and 120. He's never going to bat for a high average, but he definitely just mashes. And there's just something about him and his personality that's people gravitate towards. And he is a leader. He's a leader of the baseball team. He's very cut and dry. He doesn't make excuses for his performance. And he's tougher on himself than any of the newspapers and critics. Like, he's one of the few guys that I've seen that he's actually made for New York.
Right.
This year, he's got 22 homers and 69 RBIs so far. He's leading the NL in ribbies. And the Mets have obviously got off to a pretty hot start, and they're going to be in contention. And as long as Alonso's there and stays healthy, there's no reason to think that they can't compete for, the National League.
Sure.
So my number 16.
And I think he's had. I thought I saw a stat that he's had like the most home runs in the last couple seasons. I've got the number of seasons.
Yeah.
When you look at that list, you're like, wow. For sure. Definitely made for New York, made for the big time.
The home run derbies.
Yeah. And he's one of those guys you like to watch, even if he's not on your team. It's good. It's good to have him in this city.
Yep.
Honestly,
your number 16.
Right. Okay, 16. All right. This is probably where I'm going to put Freeman. I'll be honest. I'm a little higher on than you, but for all the reasons we've already mentioned, I don't think we have to go into Freddie Freeman again.
No.
I feel obviously he's not necessarily the happiest man right now, but you know what? He's on the Dodgers, and he's got a chance to win the World Series probably for the next how many years?
Few years.
So,
yeah.
So I'm sure he's doing, and he's getting paid pretty well for it. So we'll move on from that.
Yeah. So my number 15 is Raphael Devers, which you've already talked about. I'm not going to say anything more. So your number 15 will be?
Sure. Okay. So my number 15. Where'd it go? Probably get closer. You know what? I'm going to put Alonso right here.
Okay. Cool.
He's definitely up there. We just talked about him. So, yeah, sure.
My number 14 is Manny Machado. Without Tatis in the lineup, it seems like Manny Machado is doing better. And I'm not saying he was a bad player with Tatis. He had 28 homers and 106 RBIs last year. But this year so far, we got 12 homers, 46 RBIs, 327 batting average. His OPS is 943. Still plays a high-quality third base. He's been the leader of this team. That is, first place neck and neck with the Dodgers over there in the National League West. And they weren't expected to even contend with the Dodgers because they lost Tatis for basically half the season.
Right.
So that's why he's so high on my list. And if you look at his career, how old do you think Manny Machado is?
Honestly, you would think the guy is probably is 30 years old at least, but
yes. Well, he's 29.
He's
29.
And he's been around how many years?
Since he was 19, right? So he could probably play another 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
And do what Adrian Beltre did, where all of a sudden you look at Manny Machado and he's going to have close to 3,000 hits. He's going to have, 400 plus home runs. He's going to have like 1,400 RBIs. And he's going to be a Hall of Famer because he's compiled stats for so long that he's going to get in. Now, was he necessarily one of the best players of the generation? No. But he is a compiler, and there's a lot of compilers that are in the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
So that might offend some fans of Machado. But again, I'm taking shots at, a lot of different players. Craig Biggio is also a compiler.
Yeah, that's fair.
At what point in Craig Biggio's career did you fear Craig Biggio up to bat? Never. It was Jeff Bagwell. It was like the guys hitting behind him. Craig Biggio wasn't clutch. He wasn't Jeter, where you could say, oh, we don't want to face this guy in a big spot. No.
Cool.
But, yeah, so I have Machado at 14. Who did you have?
I had originally had another pick, but you know what? I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to put him here.
Okay.
Put Machado here.
Okay.
You kind of you changed my mind a little bit there. For all the reasons we already discussed, but yeah. Although I think he's a little bit more of a feared here than Biggio, but yeah, I'm sure anybody wants to say in the comments what you think about these players or what we just discussed. But again,
of course,
I would take his career any day of the week. But I digress.
So we're at 13 now.
Right.
My 13, I'm not sure if he's even on your list, but he should be on your list. Trey Turner of the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this kid. His speed, he plays a good shortstop. This year, he's off to a pretty hot start. 11 homers, 56 RBIs, 305 average. He really doesn't miss a beat. So,
yeah. So we're 13. Yeah. I did actually think about putting him a little lower on my list, but
okay.
We might hear his name again coming up. So we're all right. I'm gonna go. People here I'm looking at. I think I might go to someone we discussed last week on the show.
Okay.
Someone also from our beloved Houston Astros. We're talking about, of course, Yordan Alvarez.
Oh yeah.
I'll put him here.
Cool.
Just another guy that they found, like wasn't like a high hype or anything like that. And all of a sudden, like he comes out his rookie year and he's like
mashes,
floating onto the scene. He mashes. He's the guy you don't want to see at that plate ever.
Yeah. My number 12 is Vlad Jr. Just another guy that you would think living in the shadow of his father, like the pressure, like he feels no pressure and he loves the spotlight. Kudos to him. Like, that's all I could say. I mean, he's, as long as his body holds up, he's going to have more homers and more RBIs than his father, which is insane. They might have two first ballot Hall of Famers, father and son. Amazing.
You don't see that that often, that's for sure.
We'll rapid fire our next few.
Yeah. So we're going to, who we at?
12.
12, right.
I mean, you're 13, right?
I'm 13. Okay. Or wait.
Or 12.
Maybe 12.
Yeah, we're at 12.
Yeah, we should be at 12. Okay. All right. This is where I'm going to put Trey Turner.
Okay.
I think we've discussed enough about him already. Another just a stud player. Anybody
Then
would
we
love to
have
have him.
my number 11. We discussed this guy last week. I'm not going to discuss him anymore. Jose Ramirez. I absolutely love him. He's the most underrated and underappreciated player in baseball.
Sure. Okay. And I'm at my number 11.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna put. He's been doing pretty well with the Braves lately. Obviously, we were rumored to get him at one point, but I'm gonna put Matt Olson right here.
Cool.
I'm a lot higher on him than most people.
You are.
Obviously, but I don't know. I don't know. This seems right.
He's a good all-around player.
He's a good all-around player, and he's just getting started, and he's obviously with a Braves team that's looking has a chance to contend for that East title and for another World Series. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
So you're number 11, I guess? Or?
Yep. My number 11 is Mookie Betts. It's a great player, and I mean, if you don't know who Mookie Betts is, then you've lived under a rock. So that's my pick for 11.
Okay. So my pick would then this is where I'm going to put Vlad Jr. myself.
Okay.
And so that would take us to number 10, I believe.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. I have Jordan at 10.
Nice.
We don't need to go into detail anymore.
I don't disagree. All right. So for my number 10, okay. Tough call here. I'm going to put my number 10. I got a couple of guys looking at. You know what? I'll put Mookie here. I'll put Mookie Betts here, number 10.
Okay.
I would definitely see a lot of people having him in their top 10. So I feel comfortable putting it top.
Okay. My number 9, Paul Goldschmidt. As I said in last week's show, another just underappreciated career. Great ball player.
Nice. All right. So I'm going to put here. I think I'm going to formerly of Houston, now Minnesota. I'm going to put Correa here. Correa was off to a slow start, but this guy is just like another cornerstone player. Minnesota pulled off a little bit of a heist to get him. He's a heck of a catch for them.
Yeah.
What can you say about the guy? He's a clutch player. He's a leader. Plays hard. Solid defense.
He defends his teammates even at the detriment of his own self.
Sure. I do appreciate that about him.
So I will piggyback. So my pick for 8 is Carlos Correa.
Okay. So I'm number 8. Okay. This is where it gets kind of tricky.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't even brought up some big names yet.
Nope.
And I'm probably going to regret because I might have to bump somebody else off my list. But we didn't even talk about Bryce Harper yet.
That's funny because he's actually the next on my list.
So yeah, I'm like, man, he needs to be in the top 10. I know, maybe people might disagree, but yeah, that guy
he's the most. I would be honest with you. Outside of Juan Soto, he's the most naturally gifted player on this entire list. The only reason why he's not the top player is I just don't think he works hard, but I just don't think he works as hard as some of these other guys. Like I feel like in the off season, like he takes his off seasons and he's just like, all right, I'll train like a couple weeks before spring training, but he's not like Mike Trout who's in there like as soon as the season ends and he's like, all right, I'm working out, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like Bryce is like, all right, I'm gonna take some time off and then I'm gonna get at it, come, the new year.
Yeah. And maybe that's why when he debuted, I thought we were talking about like the guy for this generation, maybe. And he still is one of the top. And I would love to have him on my team.
Two-time MVP.
Two-time MVP. Obviously, no, I thought for sure he was going to be a Yankee. I know he thought he was going to be a Yankee. But, yeah.
Just didn't work out.
Just didn't work out. But it shouldn't take away from what he's done in his career. It's unfortunate the timing. He left the Nationals and they win it all. But
he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
He'll be a Hall of Famer. And, he might have a shot at a ring again eventually down the line.
And his contract's going to seem so affordable in the next couple of years that it will be very easy to move his salary. So,
yeah, I can see him being moved on to a bigger contending team within a couple of years and getting another shot at October.
So I think we pretty much will have the same consensus top 8 players. So do you want to just roll with the top 8 that I have?
Yeah, I mean, like I think we might have it pretty similar for sure. Yeah. So if you want to just roll them off right now, and I'll let you know if I agree or not. I guess we'll do a little rapid fire.
So I have Harper, Acuna, Tatis, and that says a lot about Tatis because he hasn't played at all this year.
Right. That guy has the potential to be like, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer in waiting. We'll see what happens.
Soto, Judge, Ohtani, and Trout.
That's what I know you went with that. Like we discussed it before. I'm gonna be a little different here. This is where I'll throw my wrinkle.
Judge is gonna go number 1 on your list.
No, I'm not. I'm not gonna be like. I mean, yeah. I love Judge. I've kind of wrestled with this in my head. I would like to put him number 2, and it's tough. I don't want to put him over Trout, but I kind of want to put him over Trout at the same time. But I'm honestly, my number 1, I'm going to actually flip it a little bit. I'm going to go with Ohtani as my number 1 player. We discussed before we came on the air.
Yeah.
It's like what he's doing right now is never been done before. Literally never been done before. And he's doing it on a consistent basis. And we talked about how pitch combat definitely is improved, maybe his strikeouts and everything like that. This guy is he's just like a mythic figure at this point. And
he is he's just phenomenal. I'm going to pull up his MVP season last year. 46 homers, 100 RBIs, 26 stolen bases, Silver Slugger, All-Star, the whole thing. So that's his hitting numbers. The pitching numbers last year, he was 9-2, 23 starts. Remember, they shut him down from pitching at some point last year. So he only threw 130 innings. He had 156 strikeouts in 130 innings. His whip was a 1.09. So you're talking about a guy who was one of the best hitters, power hitters in the league, and an ace on the mound. The only person in the history of baseball that was even close to that was Babe Ruth. But Babe Ruth didn't put up a season where he did both like Ohtani.
Right.
Now let's talk about this year so far. Ohtani pitching, he is 7-4, 13 starts, 74 innings, 101 strikeouts. His whip is 1.01. His strikeouts per 9 is at 12.3 compared to 10.8. So on the mound, he's having a better season. His bat is starting to come to life because the first 6 weeks of the season, he wasn't hitting very well. He has 17 homers and 49 RBIs. So we have a guy who could finish with 40 homers, over 100 RBIs, win 15 games, and strike out 230 batters. As much as I love Aaron Judge and what he's doing this year, if Ohtani goes out and puts that up, how is he not the MVP again?
Yeah, man. And as much as it pains you, yeah, how could you argue against that? And you can make an argument like most people would say, oh, why do you do? He does both. Is it taken away from his hitting or is it taken away from his pitching? Like he could just be a pitcher and be a top 5 pitcher in baseball, or he could just be an outfielder or a DH and hit 50 home runs a season and be like be an MVP candidate just doing that.
Yep.
And imagine, you know, if they could just get a team behind him that actually play well as him and Trout do, and like, geez, if you plucked Ohtani and Trout and put them on in the middle of like a lot of
Dodgers, they put them they went to the Dodgers, they went to the Red Sox, they went to the Braves. Like they would instantly be better off.
I mean, and I don't think, and everybody had high hopes with him. I know the Yankees were really wanted him. But I don't think anybody thought he was really going to put this up. Even I didn't think so. I didn't think it was possible. But
he wanted to go to the West Coast, apparently.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Because it's a quicker flight to Japan or something like that.
It makes sense.
And what they're saying is now he has changed that because I think his girlfriend, who's now his wife, lives here in the States, where she doesn't live in Japan anymore, where he's open to the possibilities of playing on the East Coast, which now you'll have, you know, the Mets, the Yankees, the Red Sox of the world that could compete for his services. So it'd be very interesting. And I think it's after next year, he's a free agent.
Right. It's going to be quite the sweepstakes. And I'll ask anybody in the comments, do you think what the Angels are going to do with that coming up?
Yeah, whether it's the Yankees or your favorite team, like where would you want to see Ohtani go? You know, for that matter, why wouldn't we rule out Seattle Mariners signing Ohtani? I mean, he obviously loved Ichiro, and Ichiro, you know, was a Mariner. Wouldn't that be a potential fit there as well? And the Mariners look like they're ready to spend, and they do need another pitcher, and they do need another bat, and he actually fills both in one. That's for the good of the game. As much as I like to see like the big teams get the big stars, but it'd be nice to have, you know, the Seattle Mariners of the world get someone like an Ohtani. It spreads the wealth out. I mean, we talked Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts. They're both on the Dodgers. Raphael Devers and Bogarts are both on the Red Sox. You have Judge, Cole, Stanton all on the Yankees. You have, you know, these teams with multiple stars. Can you imagine Ohtani with a developed Julio Rodriguez, you know, on the Mariners with Logan Gilbert, who's developing as a pitcher? Like, that'd be a nice nucleus there. And Ohtani is still young. I think he'll be 28, 29 by the time he hits free agency. So you have him for another 6-7 years of, you know, of production. In the AL West, that'd be a big move.
Yeah, you know, and it's not as far-fetched as maybe people might think.
And there's a huge, you know, Asian community over in Seattle. It would be a huge get for them. They would sell out so many games.
That would
They'd
be
make
good
their
for
money back.
baseball in Seattle for sure. As much as Riffy in the '90s Mariners brought baseball back, saved baseball in Seattle. Yeah, for sure. In that tradition,
I think
it's not far fetched, man. I think we're going to see a lot of under the radar type moves, like things you don't think of. I mean, nobody who saw Correa going to the Twins. I mean, you're going to see this kind of stuff, and it's only good for the game and only good for the market of the game, which we'll obviously eventually discuss. So, yeah. It's not a bad shout there. Of course, everybody, let us know if what you think. Where you'd like to see him? Would you like to see the Angels move him before he becomes a free agent? What do you think about that? What do we think the Red Sox are going to do about Bogarts? A couple things like that we can definitely discuss. But pretty much I agree with your top list. I probably So I put Ohtani number 1. I'll put Trout at 2. I'll put Judge at 3. And honestly, I have somewhere in there I have everyone that you mentioned, pretty much around the same. Soto, I'll go 5 with Soto, I think.
Yeah, so I have Soto.
I definitely had Jose Ramirez in my top 10 somewhere, but discussed him already.
Yeah. So Soto, in my opinion, he can go from number 4 on this list to being the best player in baseball very easily. If he can get off the Nationals.
Agreed.
I'm not saying he's dogging it, but they're just like, you can only take losing so much, and they're losing, and he's so young. He's already given them a world championship. He's turned down their contract offers. Just get him out of there. There's no sense of keeping him. You're going to lose him. You're going to get nothing for him. You're going to get a compensation draft pick that's going to take 4 or 5 years to develop that guy.
Yeah. And as much as maybe you want him around as a draw for your fans, I think your fan base would appreciate you actually turning him in and cashing him into a prospect package that can help build this team in the next 5-6 years. So
last year, the Nationals were one of the worst teams in baseball. Okay. All Juan Soto did last year in 151 games with very little protection in the lineup was hit 29 homers, 95 RBIs. He got walked 145 times. 145 times. His on-base percentage, 465. Okay. 1,000 OPS and finished on a terrible team, second in the MVP. This year, not the same season, still getting on base, but he plays elite level defense in right field.
He could solve a lot of people's problems, or just put people over the top for sure. Yep. And the list is very long. Obviously, you put him in the middle of a lineup anywhere. But imagine putting him in the middle of the Dodgers lineup, say, or the Yankees. Put in between, Judge, Stanton, Soto. I mean, or even like you said, even if he went to Tampa, he could definitely turn them around right away.
You have like Wander Franco, Arozarena.
Yeah, I mean that's a heck of a lineup.
Right.
This guy would have his pick of the litter if he could right now, but we'll see what Washington does. They didn't obviously do the right thing with Harper, so you hope that you do something. I think, like you said, this would be this is right now. This July, we got about 30 days left. I think it's August 2nd this year.
August 2nd is the trade deadline this year.
Yeah, so we've got a month to go. There's no reason why they shouldn't be on the phone right now. I'm sure there's people calling right now, and even every day. Break it down.
It's almost like when you see these extensions being shot down, it's usually the player's agent that leaks out, hey, my guy rejected this contract offer, to get teams interested in calling to trade for him. Because this signals to me, and I'm just the average Joe, like, this guy really doesn't want to be here. If he's turning down that amount of money, like Tatis took that deal, took a deal with the Padres like that. because he wanted to be there and he wanted the money. Soto is, you can pay me whatever you want to pay me. I just don't want to. I don't want to play here. You traded Scherzer last year. You paid Strasburg all this money, knowing that the guy breaks down all the time. You paid him for a World Series performance. Then the guy doesn't pitch for like 2 years. So you have him on the payroll. You have Patrick Corbin on the payroll. These guys are making a cajillion dollars and underperforming. They're just not smart with their moves, and they have obviously inherited now a disgruntled Juan Soto. He's not gonna come out and say that he wants to get traded because he's not that kind of guy. But when a news story leaks that he rejected another contract offer, it's basically him saying through the media, "Get me out of here." So I think that's pretty much our list. I had Trout at 1. You had Ohtani at 1. Can't go wrong with either one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Spin Rate Cast Pod, episode 2. Next week, if you want us to talk about anything, just let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, share. Tell your friends. Word of mouth is the best thing for content creators, and we want to make sure that you guys are being entertained. So whatever you guys want us to do within reason, we will try it out. So thanks again. And as always, good night and good luck.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Yep.